What's up guys, today we'll be going over the Legend of Acrius post buff, which if you guys didn't see, it got a 50% damage buff in the last update, which is actually a huge buff. And in this video we will be using it with the catalyst and also doing like a rapid fire comparison to all the other top DPS weapons in the game and see where it fits in after this update and this huge buff to it. So starting with the damage of the Acrius on the Ogre, it hits for 11,506, which is quite a bit for a single shot. And for the body shot, you can count it up if you want, but it's basically almost the exact same number. I'm testing the rate of fire of the weapon, shooting off 6 shots, I believe. And that 6 shots took 6.349 seconds, meaning the DPS of Acrius is 10,874 in this lost sector on the Ogre, which is actually pretty good. Another thing to note about this weapon is even with the catalyst where you get a lot of reload speed, then also using something like enhanced shotgun loader, it does not increase the damage per second if you reload cancel shots. You can only shoot this gun so fast. As you see, shooting off 6 shots while reload canceling, it still took 6.3 seconds, so that wouldn't change anything. And also another thing about this weapon is you either get 11 with no reserves, with 1 reserve you get 2, and with 2 reserves, as you see right here, you can hold up to 13 shots, and that's actually pretty good for a weapon like this that's such high damage per shot. So final thing to note about this weapon is, out of all the weapons on the compare, it has the least amount of range. As you see, the pellets can only physically go so far. They either don't hit or they hit and do full damage. There's no in between with this weapon. So the first weapon we're going to compare to is the threat level, because it is another shotgun, and some people say the Acrius now does more damage than the threat level, which is true outside of surrounded. As you see with surrounded, I hit 3,861. I'm testing the rate of fire of this weapon, shooting 7 shots, took 1.898 seconds, meaning DPS with surrounded proc is 14,239 on the shotgun. But that's only when you have surrounded, so definitely keep that in mind. Up next, let's compare to Whisper the Worm with box breathing catalyst. So shooting at the Ogre, see how much it hits, 8,439. Now once again testing the rate of fire of Whisper the Worm, shooting off 10 shots in a Lunafaction Rift, see how long that takes. And it takes 7.177 seconds, meaning the DPS of Whisper the Worm is 11,758, which is a little bit more than Acrius. Staying with exotic snipers, let's test the DARCI now, which actually got a little buff in this last update, roughly 7%. So with the catalyst, go ahead and shoot at him, and it hits for 5,107, which is actually pretty good now. Now testing the rate of fire, shooting off 10 shots with the DARCI, see how long that takes. It took 3.882 seconds, meaning the DPS of DARCI is 13,156, so now it actually beats Whisper by a decent margin, which is pretty good. Now the final exotic sniper to test is Izanagi's Burden, which is also kind of like Acrius, where it's a high damage weapon, and on the Ogre hits 18,238, which is a lot. Now testing the rate of fire, we're getting honed edge on every single shot, shooting off 5 of those shots, see how long it takes, and it takes a very long time. As you see, still going, 1 more shot, and it took 12.56 seconds, meaning the DPS of Izanagi's Burden is roughly 7,260, which is kind of low, but it offsets the high burst damage of a single shot of this weapon. Now let's test the Prospector, which is the best grenade launcher in the game, so slowing down the damage of a single shot in the Ogre. It's on hit for roughly 4.5 thousand with the burn and everything in mind. So testing the rate of fire of this weapon, shooting off 10 shots very quickly with full auto, 3.33 seconds, meaning the DPS of Prospector is 13,706, which is very high, and one of the highest in the game. Up next is the 1,000 voices, which I will not get an exact number for because it's very hard to tell exactly how much damage it does, but I would estimate it's around that 7,000 to 8,000 range, so not too high DPS, but a very good single shot damage weapon, kind of like the Izanagi's Burden. Now, the next one is going to be the Wardcliff Coil, which once again, I'm not going to get an exact number because it's hard to tell, but this is right around that 13,000 to 14,000 DPS number, like Prospector, so it's definitely very good, but doesn't have that much ammo to sustain that number. And the final weapon we're going to test is Sleeper Simulant, which is kind of like a mix of everything, where it's going to hit very high number on the Ogre, as you see right here, 10,470, but then it kind of has a slower rate of fire to balance that damage out, kind of like Izanagi's Burden, so shooting off 6 shots with a Sleeper, seeing how long it takes. It took 8.799 seconds, meaning the DPS of Sleeper Simulant is 7,139, which isn't that great, but definitely not too bad. So where does Acrius land with all these different weapons in the game? Well, it's kind of like Izanagi's Burden, but in shotgun form in a way. It hits very hard per shot, but then also has a slower rate of fire to offset that in a way. While there's weapons in the game that do more DPS than it, it's very good at everything. It's decent for ad clear because the entire shot can hit multiple ads at once, and then for the high health targets, such as the Ogre and Wizard in this strike right here, it's on one shot or two shot them depending on the modifiers, so it's good for those high health majors you're gonna find along the way in strikes and whatnot. Then on top of that, its DPS is actually pretty solid for bosses and whatnot, so it's very strong in every category maybe except ad clear. Most other burst weapons in the game like Izanagi's Burden or Sleeper that do high damage per single shot have way slower rate of fires that make the sustained DPS much lower, but the Acrius is actually a decent rate of fire for its damage, so it's kind of like a perfect hybrid between high damage and good sustained DPS. So how good is this gun right now in the game? I would say it's one of the best all-round weapons in the exotic heavy slot currently, and definitely worth using almost anywhere in the game. Anyways, let me know what you think about the Acrius buff, if you like it or not. Obviously, I think most of you will say you like it. Do you think it's a big enough buff? Do you think this should win a little bit more, or whatnot, or anything like that? Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.